Okay, Adibis, you're such a good observer. Look at this guy. He's like, Caster, stop talking about other things. This is a fairly early pool. Well, actually, no. No, why'd you do that?
It's all good.
Why did you twerk it, Adibisi? I actually thought this was going to be a 10 pool, so I broke my thought, but maybe you just messed up a little bit.
It's like observing mind games, really.
Yeah, he's trying to keep us in line here. I understand. That's fine. But just to finish out the thought process here, the WCS points are, of course, a very, very big deal. While at the shorthand, they don't do much for you in that particular season, but at the end of the road, at the end of the rainbow, is a gigantic BlizzCon tournament with lots and lots of money at hand, but a lot of fame, I mean, that's where it's going to be had. So you want to earn those points throughout the year, and one of the best places to do that would be at a DreamHack, which this one is Tier 1, so that means there's a lot of points available. 750 to the winner, in fact, so you want to get those points.
Yeah, there's quite a bit at stake. I think, you know, a good number of the players on the lower end, actually, of that top 16 currently are only about 1,500. So this can really solidify some of these guys a very nice position. And as far as the number of tournaments that are remaining, you've got WCS, Europe events, of course. The next Premier season going to be starting up in a couple of weeks. But this is the offline events are where you can get yourself that edge without having to play through all of the, you know, the weekly content and continuing to push through much larger brackets. So it's one of the other exciting aspects of these offline tournaments.
Very good point, my friend. Now, as far as this game goes, this is going to be a best of 3. It's best of 3 all the way up to the finals, or we'll have a best of 5. And you'll notice they're both playing their cards pretty close to their chest in the sense that it was pool first, then hatchery. Hatchery first is the more advantageous opening. But we found that not by too terribly much. I mean, if you pull the Zergs, there's no Zerg out there that's like, you know what, I actually prefer pool first. I think it's better. No, nobody says that. You'd rather have the hatch so that you can have just that little bit earlier access to quite a few more larvae, but also the extra mining, of course. But if you are going to play it safer, you do go pool first, and we see both these players doing that. You had cited that one of these two guys is really well known for their ZvZ, and we do have a couple of scouting links from Stephano trying to make their way in here, and they will actually get in there. Seeing that the gas is still being mined and probably a quivering spawning pool, so it's kind of nice intel there. Jaedong has actually won a lot of his games off the back of a very successful ZvZ career, whereas Stephano's been on record pretty openly about saying he does not like the matchup.
Yeah, it's a very good point, especially considering it's also a team match, so these guys are a little bit more familiar with each other than you might expect from any two other Zergs, but we actually have a lot of Zerglings being produced very early on here by Jaedong. He's already moving out towards Stephano's base. Stephano, his Baneling nest just about to finish, but he doesn't have any out just yet. The Queens are going to try to wall off this ramp here, but the Zerglings getting a pretty decent position. He can't transfuse. And Jaedong, he's just trying to do as much early damage as he can. There's a lot of Zerglings being produced behind this as well.
And Jaedong does find that Queen slides in a position to be a little bit more difficult to deal with on that ramp, but now exposing himself a little bit. This Spinecrawler does finish, though, so it looks like a pretty darn good defense from Stephano. Behind this, drones are coming out, so you'll notice a slight supply advantage for Stephano, but this is kind of the ebb and flow of ZvZ. Like, one guy makes lings, the other guy made drones, and as long as the guy that made the drones in lieu of the lings has things like queens and Spinecrawlers in place, they can make up the difference. And usually what happens behind those lings, equal part drones. So we find ourselves with damn near mirror image in terms of drones, and supply is different by 1. I mean, a very similar opening here.
Yeah, it's like a bit of a seesaw. You make Zerglings, send them over. They make Zerglings, send them back, and you just kind of go back and forth until you get a really big Baneling hit. And we do have a big Zergling engagement here outside the natural of
trying to buy time.
But now the
Banelings
are coming out. This is where he can start to get a bit of an edge here. If he can get these Banelings on these Zerglings, he's preventing the retreat in that mineral line. One detonation, nothing huge. It's still fairly even between these guys. And
great multitasking from Stephano, splitting off a single Zergling and triggering the detonation from a single Baneling from Jaedong. Again, very similar in terms of exchange, but Jaedong finds himself trailing as many as 8 drones now. Not just because of drones lost, but also because behind this, yet again, as we talked about, Stephano is droning. And now that differential is up to 11 and climbing. So both players have not started their layers. Lots of gas going down for Stephano, however, right now. And the game kind of stabilizes just a little bit. Oh, never mind. Chaos.
Jaedong's going to run some Zerglings into the main base, try to focus down at least the Queen here for Stephano. He will be able to pick that off. And more of Stephano's Zerglings are going to defend this. The Baneling's not able to catch those Zerglings running into the ramp himself, and he's just going to continue to split around here, forcing the a little bit of diversionary tactics, but he's getting drones behind this.
Exactly.
We saw Stephano had that drone lead. It's becoming closer and closer, and he's also starting his lair.
It's like a tennis match, because guess what Stephano's going to do with all these lings he made to respond to those lings? He's going to send them across the map in just a moment, and Jaedong's going to have to respond. So Jaedong has pulled up within 3 drones, but perhaps that will switcheroo once again. as we can see in that production tab, that Stephano is actually adding more drones here, making his own lair quite a bit later. So he's going to want to get some answers in with these Zerglings. No player has extended themselves to a third base just yet. Baneling's at the top of the ramp. They're looking for a big detonation. No, not going to get it.
And nothing really. He's trying to focus on a couple of Zerglings to bring onto those Banelings and kind of get the detonations.
Right.
But with the Spine Crawler here and the Queens, he can target fire down the Banelings of his opponent. Not too much available here. Now, at the same time, Stephano's going to go for that +1 range weapon, so it looks like he wants to go to Roaches.
Ooh.
But Jaedong, he's going to start a Spire.
Premier caster on Uin to the fine sounds of your voice. I'm on Uin because there's a difference here. We do have Stephano opting for the range upgrade, which very much so suggests that he is going to leverage these roaches he's making in response to the Mutalisk that hopefully he will see earlier rather than later, I suppose. He should be adding things like Hydralisk, but it's kind of well known that in this day and age, while roaches are nice and they can apply pressure to a Zerg, it's going from Ling to Muta, the Mutas will give map control, even amidst the Hydralisk. Hydralisk, while they do have a speed upgrade, still not the fastest units. So it's going to be interesting to see the adjustments, and actually there it is, Overlord speed in an infestation pit. So that makes me feel a little bit curious. I mean, I guess it's going to be infestors, but off of 2 bases. That's rough.
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting scenario because the Mutalisks are going to be out around the same time that this hatchery finishes. If Stephano can protect the third base, without the third base for Jaedong, how many Mutalisks can he really afford to make?
Right.
So we could see Stephano go for a lot of roaches and just try to have so many that the Mutalisks can't kill them off as much, go for a lot of force and prevent the third base of his opponent. He's being very active on the map with his Zerglings, but we do have now the roach speed starting, well, the first couple Mutalisks are on the way.
You're absolutely right. And you'll look at that little mini-map, too, and you'll notice there's a lot of overlords out there. So right off the bat, the part of the map control aspect is going to be denying information. Jaedong does swing around and see that that third has been put down a little bit earlier than his. Not a big deal. It's not like some of these matchups where if one player has that much earlier of an expansion, it's a huge, huge deal. But as I say that, Stephano getting a good surround on this hatchery, that hatchery will be canceled. There's no way around it. And Jaedong is finding himself having a tough time getting a third, even a Baneling detonation there, while saving his own third. Stephano, for now, in a solid place.
And an important thing to consider, Jeff, is that since Jaedong is going for Mutalisks, the Spore Crawlers with that recent buff, it's going to be a lot easier for him to defend against any kind of tech harass in the space. Now, Jaedong does have some Zerglings by the third here, but Stephano, he has the roaches out now. He's going to be able to pick these away. That Spore Crawler is starting. The Mutalisks are coming in. This Queen doesn't have too much health. He might be able to put on a reasonable amount of pressure here with the few Mutas that he does have. Yeah,
actually really nice focus fire, weakening the Queen, never going to kill it, but even with just this weakening, it allows for the Mutalisk to pull in and pop it off. That Spore Crawler about to finish, though, and it does 3-shot Mutalisk, so that's denied. But the bigger threat here is that across the map come a crawling of roaches and lings, and that means that Jaedong's going to have to shift his attention. He's going to go ahead and counterattack with those lings because that's what Jaedong does. He's got the multitasking for it, but the staunch defense of Stephano might make that an erroneous effort. Oh, never mind, that third will go down. Meanwhile, the third of Jaedong will also get denied. Both these players blooding each other's noses.
Yeah, and it's kind of a really, really interesting setup. He's going to take out the Spore Crawler as well. The Mutalisks have a little bit more leverage as far as denying bases when there's not creep there to bring the Spore Crawlers, to bring the Queens. Even the Infestors that are about to come out for Stephano aren't quite as mobile as these Mutalisks. Baneling getting a couple of solid hits off on these Zerglings, but it's coming down to this. Both players really don't want each other to get that third base almost more than anything else. We're not even really seeing him split the Zerglings, try to run by the Spine Crawlers and go for economic harass.
And I have to agree with you. One of the developing problems for Stephano, while I feel like he played the early game very, very well, he's now trailing in supply, and part of that is because he's gone for the very... Oh gosh, there might be a spread here. I'm going to break away for a second. A nice split from Jaedong. He's going to try to avoid those fungals. Stephano showing excellent patience. He does transfuse that Spore Crawler because it's a little bit of slice of heaven. Jaedong's going to interact anyways, but I don't know if I agree with this. Fungal's going down. Spore Crawler does end up dying. The Queen does go down as well. And, well, I'm glad Jaedong disagreed with me because it turns out I'm a bit of an idiot. This is a routing. Jaedong is going to have that third, and more importantly, the Infestors are gone.
Yeah, that's, you consider it takes 50 seconds to build them quite a bit more than the Mutalisks. The Zerglings are still left behind to deny Stephano's rebuilding third base, and it was kind of cool to see them use the Overlord speed. He was able to supply creep to keep that Spore Crawler from starting to die, but not quite enough. There's a lot of Mutalisks here. The Infestors forced to retreat. Even these Zerglings are getting in here. Might actually be able to pick off one or two of them. And Jaedong, he's got his third base defended so far. Will actually lose an Infestor, just a handful of those Zerglings, so... our Korean Zerg player here is looking very solid so far in this match. Absolutely.
You hit the nail on the head right now. It was very close earlier on. Dare I say Stephano had some slight advantage. That's a nice fungal. It does get all the lings. His Mules are going to want to split. Looks like Stephano's not going to risk it because he knows that his life is dependent on these Infestors. You cannot whiff on a fungal at this stage because that could mean certain doom. There's a Spore Crawler anchoring that base. Now look inside there. That's actually just a second spore caller being made. Okay, so Stephano is going to kind of calm things down a little bit for himself behind that wall. He's been trying to take a third all game long. Oh, nice dodge on that fungal right there. Jaedong.
This Mutalisk like parted straight in half as soon as that fungal came.
He missed his calling as a fighter pilot, I suppose. Quick side note, I guess, unfortunately, does still have the opportunity for that, given Korea's loss. But story for another day. Now, a lot of Lings moving into the third over here. They do get a good surround. If Stephano were to breathe life into himself...
He needs to keep the third base out.
Never mind. There's more roaches for the guy with mutas than the guy with, roach infestor himself.
It's becoming a bit of an interesting situation. Stephano's going to go try to get a cost-effective army since he can't get his third base up. Jaedong, he's already making that switch into roaches. In fact, we saw Stephano open roaches, but being able to secure that third base, so much more minerals that he can mine once that's saturated, he's just going to be able to overpower him in the number of roaches, even building them later. So this is a very nice position to be in for Jaedong. A little bit brave here with these roaches pushing into this position at the same time with all those fungal growths being available too.
This is just a war of attrition. Those fungals were excellent, but there's simply not enough. A fantastic swing around from the roaches of Jaedong. And Jaedong is knocking on the door of Stephano, and with it, it's going to be game number 1 in his favor. Even if we can see Stephano, I mean, I don't know, that even if seems a little bit out of place. The third base is being attempted behind this. Mule swinging around to go make that a fool's errand. The final roach of Stephano has fallen, and Jaedong looks to be on his way to a game number 1 victory.
Yeah, he's looking pretty solid. His roaches are a bit softened up. He has the third base now, Jaedong.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, even though Stephano's trying to go for the Swarm Host composition, he's getting his +1 carapace as well. The Swarm Host transition is already coming in for Jaedong. The energy on the Infestors burned to the point where he really can't deal with the Mutalisk harass as well. He even picked off quite a few drones during that fight, and the Spore Crawler that he does have there is quite weak. But here come these Swarm Hosts. I still feel that with the Mutalisks having this map control, taking that third base is going to be such a pain for Stephano.
Yeah, I mean, on the one hand, I want to look at what Stephano's doing and be like, oh, you can't afford to do that. What are you doing? But at this point in time, I feel like any decision he makes seems to be one that we could be critical of. I mean, that's what happens when you fall way behind is you have to take some kind of risk. So right now, his risk is he's saying, all right, I'm going to get some Swarm Hosts out, and I will have Queens and I will have Infestors. So if your Mulos can get clumped up for me and I can Mega Fungal them, fantastic. Maybe my Swarm Hosts will kill because you've decided to go pure Roach with no detection, ? I mean, that's the risk he's going to try and end up taking because he's so far behind that's the kind of stuff you have to do. If you just play it tried and true, like straight up, when you're way behind, you're more likely to lose because you're basically saying, well, I'm way behind, and if my opponent makes a severe mistake, I guess we'll be equal or maybe I pull ahead, but you don't want to ever play to the idea that your opponent makes a mistake. That's not, you're not going to get lucky that often.
That's a very good point. One of the things he'll be able to do with these Swarm Houses is his third base does get denied again. Prevent himself from investing into too many more roaches. Let the Swarm Host be cost-effective versus these roaches, and this will buy him the time to get that third base up that he needs. But like we said, Jaedong, he's got this third base. That drone can be moving out to take a fourth base, and that's so much additional economy as far as that income tab goes between these two players.
Yeah. I mean, earlier we had talked about how if 1/3 finishes before the other, it's not that big of a deal. There's obviously a limit to that. When 1/3 is fully saturated mining for going on 3, 4, 5 minutes, okay, it makes a difference. So Jaedong's going to be pulling ahead in terms of upgrades and really just composition. Like you said, he also is making Swarm Hosts. So when you have Swarm Hosts on both sides, then it becomes more of that economic numbers game. The advantage that Stephano does have is he does have Infestors, and they do get better as time goes on, as they have more fungals and more energy to release those infested Terrans. I mean, look at those fungals right there. Those roaches are held in place, and Stephano's going to win that fight. And in the background, there's no exchange. So we're looking at these roaches dying. He's not freeing up 200 supply. He's not at that point yet, and he wasn't counterattacking. So that was just a straight-up win for Stephano because he was able to fungal them and hold them in place.
You make a good point about that. And another thing to consider, though, is that once it becomes less roach and more Swarm Hosts, fungaling the Locust, not quite cost-effective. The Mutalisk's still going to be able to try to pick off one great transfuse on that Infestor. It will die anyway, but at least he'll be able to get a fungal growth off on a few of these Mutas, but he doesn't quite have the energy to invest to actually kill all of these off. And Jaedong's actually doing quite a bit of damage here with these Mutalisks.
Jaedong showing off his alternate career in Asteroid, dodging those fungals remarkably. He does end up losing all the Mutalisks, and I do, he did kill a couple Infestors there, so it's not like a straight loss like those Roaches were, but I don't know. Stephano kind of clambering his way back in. Sure, he's down 50 supply, and I know a lot of you are like, dude, that's a lot. It is a lot, but a couple of Roach pickoffs there, a couple of Mutalisk packs dying there, and all of a sudden we're talking about a different game. I'm also paid to make this interesting, so I'm trying as hard as I can, okay?
Perfectly.
Give me a break.
Perfectly understandable. And one of the other interesting things is, throwing away those Mutalisks like that, picking up the Infestors. I think the Infestors are going to have a greater role in the later phases of this game.
You're right.
The Mutalisks, maybe it's not so much a part of his plan anymore. We do see the Hydralisk Den coming in. Could just be turning into that Roach Locust Hydralisk, and he's going to manage to get another one of these Infestors with the Locust. And, we actually saw a couple games yesterday, a couple ZvZs, where there were upgrade advantages for Zerg players with just less Locust, and it wasn't enough. The number of Swarm Hosts is going to really dictate the pace of this game, and right now, the person with more money to build those is Jaedong.
Whenever I see Swarm Host versus Swarm Host, I always think of, like, Dota or League of Legends. I feel like these are creep lanes that they're just kind of like, they bring in their heroes that are roaches and fungal, and they like, oh, wow, he's pushing a tower, which is actually a base. It gets... I don't know, I've been watching a lot of Dota, I guess it's kind of invading my brain. Don't worry, I'm still Starcraft. But it looks like Jaedong can afford to be the aggressor here. He does have well, let's check on the units tab, actually. He's got, he actually has less Swarm Hosts. I was doing that caster thing where I lead into something because I'm just assuming that I'm right. I'm wrong. Stephano managed to have more Swarm Hosts. So if he can hold this back, he will not die. There.
That's
how you like that load of information, Nathaniel?
that's what the Swarm Hosts are for, buying that time, becoming slowly more cost effective. Jaedong's going to push in towards his third base, though. The fungal growths are going to hit a lot of these. The Locusts will be coming in to reinforce, and the Infestors, you cannot afford to constantly fungal growth the Locust of your opponent. But if he takes out the Roaches, like you said, that even number of Swarm Hosts, once the Roaches are removed from the equation, it becomes a straight even fight. But the third base will fall, and Jaedong, he's got his fourth done.
He's got his fourth. He's pushing his fifth. I mean, Stephano actually climbed in supply for a moment there. He was getting the quote-unquote better engagement, but Jaedong can afford to focus down the hatchery, and in doing so, he has cut down the production of Stephano critically. Not only the production, but look, he's long-distance mining because his natural's actually mined out. So Stephano, he has been backed into a corner. He's going to make a desperate counterattack here. I don't know if all of the Swarm Hosts of Jaedong move command with the drones that he has. Maybe this game equalizes, but other than that, Stephano's going to give it his best effort, but it's just that is his effort.
And he has the Overseers over these Swarm Hosts. The Hydralisk moving in from the right side. He's going to be able to corner these. He can throw them and unleash another wave of Locusts. He's able to at least pick off the fourth base, but Stephano's
get behind those minerals.
He's just running for his life right now.
And he's going to try as best he can, but that is a concave of Roach Hydra, and Jaedong has pushed Stephano up against the ropes and is going for the haymaker. Stephano gave a great fight, but there's the GG.